Not a matter of if, but when crisis will rock your world. I'm Roshini Rajkumar, crisis strategist, licensed attorney, and host of The Crisis Files. We are on location at Mall of America. You know it as one of the biggest retail and entertainment destinations in the world. Thank you, MOA, for hosting us. You know him as the voice of the Minnesota Vikings football team. He has his own show on KFAN, the country's top sports radio station. He's also the voice of Canterbury Park. There really isn't any play action Paul Allen can't do. He's here for the case file I call Spiritual Play. Paul, let's start with this. Play-by-play for Minnesota Vikings since 2002 on the Minnesota Vikings radio network. How do you keep it fresh?
Well, the team finds a way to keep it fresh. I mean, I'm just a conduit of information to what's transpiring on the field. Now, this is my first play-by-play job at any level. I auditioned for it, I lost and handled it with aplomb, and then I won, and then it was given to me.
What was the gap between that time?
Here's how it went down. In 2000, the Vikings wanted an internet broadcast because their popularity worldwide was exploding. They went to WCCO Radio, which was carrying the Vikings at the time, and their parent company, CBS, refused to have a .com that goes worldwide, 2000. So the Vikings, with Terry Hummel and Mike Kelly, a couple of vice presidents, came to KFAN, AM 1130 at that time, and said, CCO won't do this, so would you guys do it? And KFAN, I think owned by Clear Channel at that time, said, yeah, we'll do it. So then Greg Swedberg, one of my bosses who's still there, he called a mandatory team meeting of all the talent. And I had only been there for 2.5 years. I had just moved here full time in '98. And I had never done any play-by-play outside of racetrack announcing. And so he told us about the situation and said, who wants to do play-by-play? So God had me raise my hand. And nobody else raised their hand. And I put my hand up, and I did a cybercast for a year for them at Vikings.com. They liked facets of it. I'm not going to be foolish here and not recognize having a radio show on a popular radio station that was gaining popularity by the second. Well, that had something to do with it too, with the marketing types, like, hey, you know, this guy may be good one day, and maybe we can control some of this real estate. Okay, cool. I mean, I'm racetrack raised. It doesn't matter how you get to the winner's circle as long as we're all getting there and getting our pictures taken. So I raised my hand, I did it. Then the job opened into the 2001 season. And I was told by a vice president driving from the state fair, we're gonna make you the next voice of the Minnesota Vikings. So then, like literally 3 hours later, I was told, no, pardon the pun with your horse racing, bent, but hold the horses. Red McCombs, the owner of the team, he wasn't happy with the previous person who was hired, who was fired in probably 3 weeks, a man named Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, for some things he said on his San Diego radio show. So he's like, why should I let you guys hire the next voice? Well, now I'm out. And Red hired his best friend's son, who was calling Austin Peay University baseball and some NBA G or D League New Mexico basketball. And I'm like, all right, well, that sucks, but it didn't really hurt me that much because I never had done it and I didn't really know what I was losing.
And you had a good thing you were doing.
Well, I mean, I thought I did. You know, I'd been at Canterbury Park at that point 7 years and had stopped traveling around the country, doing the gypsy thing for 6 years, from Northern California for 6 months, Grand Island, Nebraska for 2 months, Shakopee for 3 months and change. I mean, I did that for 5 years and it was tough. It's grindy. So I lost it. But when I say that I became the next voice of the Minnesota Vikings in 2002 by handling that loss with aplomb, is I did Vikings Fan Line. And I not one time, because this is just how my heart works, I didn't rip the guy one time. He wasn't very good. He was kind of boring. I didn't rip him one time. I didn't rip him on the radio show. I'm not big back talker in the first place. So therefore that played into them reconsidering me for the job in '02. and I got it in '02, and here we are.
Well, Paul, first of all, I'll say you were just the guy to take on a team, the Minnesota Vikings, that has the same kind of up and down, heartbreak highs. Full disclosure, this part of the conversation, most of this conversation, Paul and I have not really discussed. He can just sit down and talk. I can just sit down and talk. So everything he just said to you about his history, I had no idea. And full disclosure, I'm a former WCCO radio host, had a Sunday show for 9 years.
Yep.
I left it, I sunset it to prepare for and create the Crisis Files. So, wow, Paul spilling the beans about a lot of things that I didn't expect today. And you may be the first guest who's left me a little speechless.
Believe it or not, I don't like talking about myself. And I turned down a fair amount of money yearly by big companies to be keynote speakers and tell your story about just what I just shared with you. I'm tired of telling that story.
Are you okay that millions may hear it on the Crisis Files?
Well, no, not at all, because it's authentic and it was organic, and I never tell that story. I don't.
I really appreciate that you shared that story, because some of the lessons that we bring you on the Crisis Files are, we bring you inspirational people who have gotten over things, who know how to get up, not name call, but keep doing it again and again, and success happens. And you are an example of success. And I think what's so beautiful about you sharing this story is most people just see you as a success, and they don't know about the grind, and they don't know you worked really hard. I want to talk today, and a big reason why I wanted you to come on the Crisis Files is because you are a spiritual person. You are very, very faith first, and you infiltrate that into everything that you do. I don't have an issue with it. Does anyone have an issue with that? Because you're in a real masculine, sports-focused world where faith doesn't always fly.
Well, infiltrate is a very strong word, and it has a connotation that you, in essence, are executing and or implementing something that not everybody is on board with. So I'm not going to take umbrage with the word infiltration. I understand what you're saying. I would like to say I couldn't care less if people don't believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ. But that's not true, because that's all I care about. And
it permeates everything you do. How about that word?
Okay.
It permeates.
Right. But to say that I've always believed in God. I'm 58 years old. I believed in God all my life. I've always prayed the Lord's Prayer. I always was the kid who talked to God. Thank you for this beautiful day, Father. Okay, I've always been that person. Until 5.5 years ago, I never had read a word in the Bible, and I had no idea the significance of Jesus Christ, the crucifixion, the resurrection, the ascension, and the Pentecost. So the Bible, specifically in the book of Romans, written by the Apostle Paul, teaches God chooses us. We don't choose him. So therefore, 5.5 years ago, when I went to my first evangelical preach, and the pastor, Pastor Wes, who's become my best friend and number one teacher, was doing a series called All Sides of the Savior. And it was the burden of unforgiveness. All right, dynamic speaker. And passages were popping up: Hosea, Ruth, Corinthians, Malachi, whatever. I had no idea what was happening. But I knew I was really enjoying what was happening, and I knew that, wow, when I left there, I'm like, I can't stop thinking about this. And I couldn't wait to get back, so I went back. This was 5.5 years ago. So I went back the next week, and it was the burden of idolatry. I had no idea what the word idolatry meant. Passages popping up again, taking something of 2019 and making it pertinent per the Bible, tying it into the here and now. And I thought it was fascinating. But then from the book of Matthew, which is one of the four Gospels, it's the first book in the New Testament. Jesus said through Matthew, paraphrasing Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 to 30, "Come to me, all who are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." Paraphrasing, "For my heart is lowly and my burden is light." And while I had just learned God was man on earth, didn't know that. Didn't know that until 52 years of age. I knew about the crucifixion and the resurrection, didn't put the whole thing together because I never read the Bible. So now I've learned God was man on earth through Christ. And I also know what's coming and the pain that goes with it. And it's more than just Passion of the Christ with Mel Gibson's movie and Jim Caviezel as Christ. It's my favorite movie. I mean, it moved me before I learned about Christ. So therefore, I kind of had an idea what the pain looked like. So I'm thinking to myself after that one, I'm driving to Canterbury to call races, and I'm like, so let me get this straight. If he's God, which he is, and he knows the pain that's coming and the suffering that's coming, yet he's going to tell me his burden is light and his heart is lowly, and I'm going to sit here and worry about all these trivial things I worry about in my life? Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous.
Really great point.
So that was very moving to me. And since then, I've taken classes on the book of Revelation, systematic theology, end times, 1 John. It's my life. It's my entire life. And it's a pleasure and a privilege when I get the opportunity to share and to talk about it with people. I'd be a fool to say that there aren't detractors, but they're not confident enough to be detractors to my face. And I pray that they would be. And it's not so I can tear somebody down. That's not the case at all.
You can have a discussion, maybe civil dialogue about it.
And intelligent questions require intelligent answers. So when people have the courage, or if anybody ever asks me, why do you believe the Bible? Part of it is I choose to believe the Bible because of reliable accounts over the course of 1,500 years that has corroboration that includes 25,000 archaeological finds that are in lockstep with where they're supposed to fall in the Bible. So truly, the intelligent people, quote, intelligent, end quote, tell me that you're intelligent if you don't believe in the faith. I think it's the other way around. I think the fool is the one who does not believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ.
So what about people, I mean, I'm behind. I mean, I was born a Catholic. I believe in all of these things you're saying. I have no issue, however, if someone is not a Christian. And in fact, my paternal grandfather was Hindu. I have friends who are Jewish, Muslim, all different kinds of things. Some
Amen.
who are agnostic, atheist. So are you okay with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For instance, if person A here, is an atheist and they challenge me on something, well, I feel like God has had me put enough time into the Bible and learn enough through the teachers that he's given me, because ages 52 to 58 with these jobs and a daughter in college, I'm not going to seminary at this time of my life. So I'm all self-taught. So when I started speaking at churches and Christian school fundraisers and running a chapel in Shakopee and stuff like that, if somebody were to say to me, well, what gives you the right to do this? You didn't even go to college. You're not properly theologically raised. You're not a seminarian. Right, and I hadn't gone to college and called one game in my life before God decided to put me in the National Football League as my first play-by-play job, and he has me holding it. Now, as the Bible teaches, I look back at those years before I learned the true significance of Jesus Christ and the following God was building for me. The eloquent speaking skills and the confidence with the speaking skills that he was giving me for this part of my life. So therefore, if it's an atheist, if it's a Muslim, if it's a Jew, no matter what it is, if it's a Mormon, if it's a Buddhist, if they're into Hinduism, yeah, I mean, be my friend. I'll be your friend too, and I'm gonna love you.
Let's have a conversation. Let's get to know each other. Let's break down ignorance and stereotypes.
Right, but see, I'm never gonna be the bang the Bible on the head guy. Never. Everything that you're going to hear me say, none of it's my opinion. It is the deciphering of what's taught through the gospel of Jesus Christ or through the totality of the Bible, where there are a lot of dark moments in the Old Testament. But you can't hand pick what's good for you and bad for you in the Bible. When Jesus says, ask and you shall receive, if you ask to hit the Powerball and you don't, and now all of a sudden you hate God, you're the fool. So therefore, if you can't understand the genre and the era of what life, especially for women, was like 2,000 and 3,000 years ago, well, I'm not going to tell you not to start, but you have to have a grasp. Like when Jesus taught the disciples the Lord's Prayer, it's the only place in the Bible where the art of praying, actually the handbook, the prototype, the model is laid out. And the Apostle Peter, rabbi, teacher, Jesus, teach us how to pray. He said, I thought you never asked. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, the Lord's Prayer. Well, in the Lord's Prayer, when he teaches, give us this day our daily bread. Okay, now when I'm teaching my kids, Derek and Nicole, at a young age, all right, let's learn the Lord's Prayer. Here we go. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. The kingdom come, ritualistic. Well, shame on me. That's completely wrong. Because when they were taught, give us this day our daily bread, they didn't have any food. And they were begging and wailing and whining and crying for food. Because what food they did have, weather went the wrong way, sand blew the wrong way, the food perished. And if the food perished, because they didn't have refrigerators, obviously, if the food perished, what happened next? People died.
Yeah.
Not just a few, tens of thousands.
Right.
Well, that hits my heart.
Yeah.
When it comes to taking that era, that passage that I quoted to you earlier, Roshini, Matthew 11, 28 to 30. Well, that was right after something called Sermon on the Mount, which is the most powerful, greatest speech ever given in the history of the world, and it was led by Jesus Christ. It has the Beatitudes and so on. So we're right around the time the Lord's Prayer was taught. Well, come to me all who are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, like we yoked up like cattle, and learn from me. Jesus was preaching to thousands, mostly women, who, by the way, were being raped by Romans and then given back to the Jews. And they were what is known as defiled. So therefore, they're being given back to the Jews. Well, now you can't marry. And now you can't have children, okay? Because you've been defiled in the eyes of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the Jewish leaders.
So completely changed the
Christ
trajectory.
was saying to these women, come to me, have faith, more so than this bogus law that they're teaching you, simply because these bad things happened. Well, if that doesn't move you right there, then, they're obviously not a woman.
It is very moving, and I will tell you one thing that made me want to talk with you about this topic is in Paul Allen's X profile, his bio bullets have a quote from Corinthians 15. But by the grace of God, I am what I am. And what you have just described really helps us understand why that is in your bio bullets, so prominent. If someone can't have this kind of conversation with you, which we are blessed to have here today, and all the Crisis File listeners will hear this, but if someone just wants to know you, I feel like all they need to do is read that one line in your bio bullets on the X platform.
Well, I'm not the Christian who's going to say, I heard this big voice in my head. I saw this dove in front of me. I saw this vapor in front of me. I'm not that Christian. Because God gave me a life where I live a public life, and he gave me really, really cool jobs, okay? And a lot of people want to do what I do. So therefore, I wrestle with, so cool. You get to have all these cool jobs and be Billy Graham. Boy, aren't you just touched and blessed? Well, maybe I am.
One thing I wanted to ask you and get into with you today, many people are going to listen to this Crisis Files case file and wonder, wow, why isn't he a full-time preacher? Well, you do some preaching in Shakopee, Minnesota at Canterbury Park, and that seems to have come about very organically. Can the general public come and hear you, or is that just for the people who work there?
Oh, no, they can. I'm not going to go through the full story with you, but 4 years ago, the late pastor Ed Underwood, who ran the Canterbury Park Chapel. It's on the infield. If anybody's been to the racetrack, you got where you watch the races on one side, on the other side, the barns and everything where the grooms live. A lot of a Hispanic background. They travel track to track, and it's kind of the cliched, here's your X amount of dollars for the week. Half of it is sent back to their families overseas. So it's that group. And so that's the ministry. Well, Ed saw me praying with a jockey in the paddock before a race, and he came up to the announcer's booth and asked me, would you like to speak at our chapel? It took me a month to respond to him. I was so nervous. So I said yes. And up to that, preparing it with the help of Pastor Wes, it was the most daunting microphone work I've ever done in my life. It still is when I get the honor to speak about Scripture and share it. It's the Word of God. I mean, I hold it with more reverence than anything. So it still is daunting, but that's how it started. Then Ed sadly died with some form of cancer in his neck 2.5 years ago, and he asked me to run the chapel. And I said, yeah. And so therefore, mid-May to mid-September, every Monday night, that's when we have our sermons. We've grown it over the years. So from praying in the paddock with a jockey to being scared to do the first preach all the way through that moment, there's been a lot that's transpired. Most of the speaking that I do and what is next for me when I can get organized with it is speaking at Christian school fundraisers. I want to do that. I want to help these schools grow.
Well, I think that's amazing. And what is really beautiful about this story is these gifts that, yes, God gave you, that you didn't necessarily know how would Paul Allen show up in the world. And I'm guessing the answer to those questions have gone beyond your wildest dreams.
What do you mean?
Just what you're doing. I mean, could you have scripted this?
No, but see, there have been so many phases over the last 5 years where I would become frustrated and upset that there weren't more honors put in my life. That the opportunity to run a chapel, the opportunity to speak to Christian high schools, the opportunity to share why through the gospel of Jesus Christ, I believe, is the only route to heaven. You know, we mention all these different religions and stuff. Isn't it interesting how in all these different religions, with the exception of Judaism, Jesus Christ is mentioned, rhapsodized, and glorified in all of them, with the exception of the resurrection. So it's like, if you recognize him as a prophet, him the way you recognize him, but what type of pride can't get you over the hump to believe the corroboration and the evidence and the eyewitness reports over the course of X amount of years? It's just very interesting that every single religion basically recognizes him, but only one gets over the hump, Christianity. And I believe it, and I believe it to be wholeheartedly true.
Well, wow. Just when people see your name when they pull up this episode and think, we're just going to talk football.
We can talk whatever you want. I am what I am. Per that Corinthians reference, I am what I am.
Part of the reason I even wanted you on the show is because I know how in your DNA Jesus Christ is, and how in your DNA your faith is. So even though what we got to hear today is so special and we have not heard it before, you do let it permeate and mesh into your professional life, both for the Vikings and for Canterbury Park. And for that, I really applaud you, because not everyone could do it and do it authentically and do it robustly and also not get fired for doing it.
Really?
So you're a unicorn.
Wow.
You were a unicorn.
See, that's the nickname Troy Dobbs with Grace Church has given me, and the unicorn. That's interesting you say that.
You are a unicorn,
well,
Paul
because
Allen.
I don't want to ask him why. Like, why is this the nickname? Okay, I don't want to know why. And it just happened again.
I should talk with him. Yeah.
I never
you
looked at it that
are
way.
a unicorn, but that's what's so beautiful, that you've come to this place where you don't need the accolades. Just doing it, though, you are bringing in, just being Paul Allen, you are bringing in so many people on so many levels who maybe didn't feel they had a friend, had a faith. And I applaud you for that. The Crisis Files applauds you for that. We could talk to Paul Allen forever. I am so grateful you came to the Mall of America to experience this first on-location event with the show. You can follow Paul on X at PA on the mic, PA on the MIC. Find out more about him on kfan.com. Follow us on YouTube, X, and Instagram at The Crisis Files. Rate, review, and subscribe to The Crisis Files on your platform of choice. Check out our website, thecrisisfiles.com. Thanks, Mall of America, for having us. I'm Roshini Rajkumar. Join me next time on The Crisis Files.